Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Cardinal Control Room. My name is Suzy Smith, and I'm the chair of the Department of Media. Many of you alumni, of course, know it as the Department of Telecommunications. I always like to say, same great department, just a more updated name. So it's great to be with you tonight. Tonight, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about something that's sort of near and dear to my heart, and that's the idea of career change and how some of the things that you learn as part of your college experience are truly adaptable no matter what career you might move into. And we've got a couple of people who are joining us who have done this in their career. And so they're going to spend some time talking with us a little bit about making the decision to make that career change and some of the things you need to watch out for and all those sorts of things. So I want to welcome first Bree Kirkman, who is a 2016 graduate, and then Katie Warthan, sorry about that, Katie, who is a 2005 graduate. And what I thought I'd first start doing is let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit. And so Bree, let's start with you. Talk a little bit about what your area of concentration was while you were at Ball State and some of the things you might have been involved with.
Yeah, so I was at Ball State from 2012 to 2016. I was a journalism TCOM news major, and my minor was in comm studies. So I think one of the interesting things when I was thinking about my years at Ball State was I spent half of my time before the Unified Media Lab was really in effect or really in existence. So when I was doing NewsLink Indiana, we were still downstairs, as we called it. And then the second half of my years, my last 2 years, the UML was really off the ground. So we were all working together, the Daily News, NewsLink, Ball Bearings, and Byte were all in this like brand new, shiny Unified Media Lab. And I was really involved starting out with NewsLink, but then, the daily and doing everything together. I did have a specific concentration on digital toward the end. And with my comm minor, I was also really involved on the speech team. So I always say I was extremely popular. I did student media and speech and debate in my college years. And yeah, after that, I got my master's at Syracuse University. I studied arts journalism and then went in the complete other direction after I graduated with that. And my first job was a crime reporter for a newspaper in Danville, Illinois. And then I came back to Indiana. I was a digital reporter at the Bloomington Herald-Times, which was close to where I grew up. Then made a jump again into public media, working for Texas Public Radio in San Antonio, where I was for the last 3 years before I made the jump out of journalism. And now I'm a senior web content producer at UT Health.
Katie, how about you?
Hey, Suzy. I went to Ball State during 2001 to 2005. TCOM was my major with a concentration in production. I have no idea if that still exists now. And then I got a minor in advertising. So, okay, good. So during my time, I was very involved in Connections Live with Dr. Jim Shasky, incredible professor at Ball State. And we went to the Emmys a few times, even won an Emmy that I think is still around there somewhere with my name on it. But, just a great opportunity to, do the work and apply what we were learning at Ball State. I then had an internship in TV news between my junior and senior year. And then when I graduated from college, I became a news promotion topical producer in Evansville, Indiana. Spent a little over a year there. And then my husband and I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I spent 3 years as a producer there, and then moved back to Indiana once we started having a family and building that life. And I spent 5 years at Wish TV, again, as a promotions producer, and then helped launch the brand new CBS 4 when that launched in 2005. And I spent 6 years as a TV promotions manager for CBS 4 and then Fox 59 as well. And then the pandemic hit, and I think we were all reevaluating kind of our next steps, and decided to make a big change, and am now at Prairie as the Director of Marketing and Brand Strategy, leading the Smithsonian Museum in Fisher. So it's been a great ride.
That's awesome. Katie, let me ask you this. Is what you ended up doing when you first started out in your career what you were planning on doing when you first came to Ball State as a student?
No, definitely not. I remember going to Ball State the summer before I started, and it was for like a couple day intensive program. And, I think I, like many people who go to Ball State for TCOM, think they're going to be on camera. But I did that one time and decided I did not want to do that. I preferred being the writer and producer behind the scenes. So really, really enjoyed my time in TV news doing that, getting to do so many different things in the creative services realm. But really found that I was ready for a change outside of TV news.
That's cool. I will say that as a production concentration, you probably going into more of a news arena, although you were in creative services, was probably a little bit different than most of the people that you graduated with. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, Bree, you went a little bit more of the traditional route when you graduated. Was that on by design, or was that just sort of the way things worked out?
I think it was just the way things worked out. And I mean, the reason why I went to grad school was just because I was not ready, and which is odd to say. And maybe, for students listening, it's like, oh gosh, am I going to be like that? Because I was really involved. And I was always in the newsroom, or always working on stories, or, doing classwork. But I just had the feeling when I was about to graduate, like, oh my God, I can't believe like someone would hire me. That's not possible. That's not real. And so going to grad school kind of was a fast track into giving me not even like professional experience, but like a professional education on like, how am I supposed to act as an adult, or what is this big secret that everyone has that I'm not getting? And especially at Syracuse, in the Newhouse School, it's very hardcore, I would say. Ball State definitely felt more like a family. I know that language can be kind of coded too, but that's how I felt at Ball State. It really felt like I was with my family and friends all the time. And Syracuse was really hardcore. And after being in that program, I felt like I didn't have a choice. I was like, oh, I have to get a job in journalism because so many people are going to be disappointed in me. And if I, don't at least try, then maybe I'd be disappointed in myself. And so that's kind of just what happened. And I'm sure a lot of people in a lot of industries have that feeling that if they don't even try to get a job in what their major was in, that they'll have some regrets.
So you've both made this change now, out of what we think of as traditional media jobs into things that still involve media. And I'm curious to know, Katie, what are some of the skills that you think that you've learned along the way that have most easily transferred as part of your new position?
Absolutely. So leadership has been something that I've been able to bring to both areas, and really, really enjoy leading people. Also writing and communications, and really just understanding who the audience is. I think that that was something that was kind of lacking as far as, who is our audience that we're talking to, and how can we make sure that not only the content that we're choosing through blogs or newsletters or videos, not only speaks to them, but is something that they can get behind and get excited about. So I've just been really interested in the user journey and what that looks like. And I've really enjoyed leading the creative strategy and the advertising buys that we do for the museum. And that's something that I got experience doing in TV news as well.
Katie, talk a little bit about what your job entails now, so we better understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So I lead a team of 6 other individuals, and we are in charge of getting people to visit Conner Prairie. So we build awareness through several different touch points, not only on social media, but as I mentioned before, traditional media plan, advertising, commercials, that sort of thing. And then we also do, interviews with TV stations, and we do direct mail campaigns, and pretty much everything that we do to not only build awareness of what Conner Prairie is, but then get people excited about coming. We also try to bring in more field trips and build our membership base and that sort of thing. So it's a really exciting job. I get to do a lot of really cool things. Conner Prairie is a very unique place that is known for its living history, but they also have goats and sheep, and so it's a really exciting job. I'm never doing the same thing. I have a wonderful team who manages, as I said, our social media, our website, emails that are sent out, that sort of thing. So definitely get to do a lot of fun day-to-day work.
So Bree, you have the writing element that you spent years as a few years as in the print journalism side of things, but then you moved on to public media. Now you're at UT Health Systems, and I'm curious to know what out of public media were you able to bring? I mean, in terms of working with audio and that storytelling aspect.
Well, that's a great question. And first of all, I think that, the difference between what we know as traditional media or commercial media and public media, the thing that I've learned more from public media into this next job, working at UT Health, is the mission and the focus on being mission driven, and everyone really understanding and knowing what the mission statement is in the organization, and being a nonprofit. And I think Katie mentioned this a little bit earlier, but that community engagement aspect as well is something that throughout the organization, being in public media was really something that was honed in and was a focus of the entire organization. It had a very nonprofit feel to it. You have pledge drives twice a year, and you're all working and kind of doing the same steps to reach that goal and to serve the mission and let your community know that this is a free service, but it can only be free with donors like you, as they say. And so then going into UT Health, which is a hospital education system, for people in Indiana, I guess the best thing that I could compare it to is IU Health, even though IU Health is more of a hospital system, and UT Health coming out of the UT Austin system, but I'm here in San Antonio, is really on that education aspect. So we have a school of nursing, a school of dentistry, Mays Cancer Center, different offsets like that. And of course, when you're dealing with anything health related, you also have that community aspect to that, and the educational aspect, right? Because we're also serving our students. And then my specific focus is the new School of Public Health here at UT San Antonio, which is not even yet enrolling students. That's how new it is. They will be enrolling students next year. So again, it's that public community driven aspect. And I think that we learned a lot about that from the pandemic as well.
So, Katie, you mentioned it earlier. You talked about, COVID sort of giving everyone that opportunity to reevaluate, reassess. Is that sort of what happened to you? And how did you come about the decision to say, you know what, it's time to do something different. It's time to, step outside what I've been doing, and just try something new.
Yeah, absolutely. So, after spending 15 years in TV news promotion, I had seen, a lot of change that had happened, in the Indianapolis market and just markets all over the place. And so for me, COVID presented, I'll call it an opportunity, just to kind of, ask myself, and I think everyone was doing a lot of soul searching at that time to try to really understand, do I feel valued? Do I enjoy getting up every day and doing what I do? And so, I think after doing some soul searching during that time, I knew that I was ready for what that looked like and how easily transferable my skills would be. But, luckily I landed where I did and have found that the transition has been really smooth. In fact, I remember thinking like, I'm going to a museum. I'm going to be bored because, the structure isn't like a TV station, but I definitely work harder than I ever have. But the work that I do is so much more fulfilling. And I think, what Bree said, you're working, at a place where you really believe in the mission, that you can really get behind and support. And so what I do now is to me so much more valuable than what I did before.
So you earlier talked a little bit about leadership and that aspect of things sort of transferring, but what other skills do you think have been very transferable for you? Whether it's skills you learned while you were back in college or skills that you picked up along the way in working in media?
Yeah. Well, I'll say, definitely working in the media, I had a better understanding, I think, than most about what it takes for stories to get picked up by stations, what they're interested in, how you can make their jobs easier. So, giving them video, giving them basically, instead of a press release, you're just providing them with the content that they need to put the story together. So I think just coming from, that background of working in media, that helped me better structure the stories that we were trying to pitch to get covered. So that definitely was helpful.
How about you, Bree? You said that the public health school is not yet admitting people, but will be soon. And so what kinds of things have you been able to transfer from, again, besides that mission, driven, knowing the mission, what are some of the other skills, the actual hands-on things that you've been able to bring into your new position?
Well, for anyone who's working at an organization or a company who they themselves is not from that city or that town or even that state, like me, right? I moved to Texas for my previous job, so I'm brand new to the area. The best way to learn about your community, I think, is to be a journalist. I mean, it just really forces you to know everything and to kind of get into everyone's business. So I think the job that I have now would be much harder if I didn't know who the important people were living in San Antonio. And I don't think that's unique to this job, right? I think that anyone who is working anywhere and they're able to name every single city council member, that makes them a better employee no matter what their job is. If you can know or have a relationship with the stakeholders in your industry or in your community, that's just such a valuable, it's not even really a skill, but institutional knowledge. But other people who have only lived in San Antonio for the short amount of time that I have probably wouldn't know as much I do if they weren't a journalist. So that's a skill that's kind of a lifelong thing that will always be with you, because even if you leave journalism, you're always going to have an interest in the news and current events, like you can't help it. And that's impressive to companies, and that'll be impressive to potential employers. And of course, anytime you do anything live, I think whether it's live TV or live radio, there's just something that lets you work well under pressure. And it's a great thing to bring up in an interview too.
So what was the onus for you to make that change? I hope it was something that was your choice and not.
It was, yes.
Okay.
Yes, no, yeah, it was. But it's still sad, right? Because it feels like when you decide to leave a job or even change industries, it kind of feels like a relationship is ending, right? It feels very personal. But for me, also what Katie said with the pandemic, everyone was reevaluating everything. So that was one seed. But I think that the final thing for me, and I hope this isn't triggering for anyone, but covering Uvalde, it was extremely difficult. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. The shooting happened on the same day as election night here in San Antonio. And so the next day we were there, me and another colleague were on the ground from Wednesday to Friday. I came back to San Antonio, went to a child's birthday party on Sunday, which was really difficult, then had to go back to Uvalde the next week and also stay the night. So it was just really hard. And I started thinking about, I think Katie mentioned her family, and like, that's something that I want too. And I was looking at my newsroom, and there are 25 people in my newsroom. 3 of them have children. They all only have 1 child. And of those 3 colleagues, only one of them was a woman. So, you start doing the math and you start putting things into perspective. And I was always proud of my job. I think that one of the coolest things about being a journalist is when you're meeting new people and you say that, you work for the public radio station or the local TV station or the newspaper, they have that sense of awe and it feels really good. But I just didn't want my job to be my entire personality anymore. And I wanted to be involved in things in the community and be more interesting and have a more interesting life aside from my job title.
I'm going to ask you both this. What is the best thing about your new position? And what is the thing you miss most about having left your old position? Katie, let's start with you.
Oh, that's a good question. I'll say the best part about where I'm at now is that I can see the impact that our organization is making on the community. We have a great volunteer program that my youngest son is actually involved in, and they can start when they're 10 and they can go all the way through high school. And so that to me, we're inspiring curiosity for people of all ages. So we're starting with kids when they're really little, and then people are bringing back or coming back to visit when they're adults, bringing their own children back. So it's just seeing that multi-generational impact that we're having is to me the biggest reward. The thing that I miss most about my old position in TD News is just the people. As Bree mentioned, it's a family environment. You get really close to the people that you work with. You're working sometimes crazy hours covering really tragic events. And, there's just it very much feels like, a tight knit, close bond. And you do get really close with the people that you work with. So luckily though, I'm still in the same town, so I'm able to stop by and see them. I was there twice last week promoting our Headless Horseman Festival. So that was really good.
That's great. How about you, Bree?
Yeah, I would say the best thing, I'll piggyback, is say impact. I mean, I really see that every day. I see that in, the lives of students and professors and community members, people who are receiving care. It's such a great thing. Also the work-life balance. I really appreciate that. And the thing that I miss the most probably is I think what I said earlier, like telling people that I'm a journalist. I just felt really cool and proud of myself to be able to say that.
That's cool. So what is something that you've had to learn since going in that position? Because, while we talk about skills being very transferable, and I think you've obviously told us that and shown us that the skills we picked up along the way are absolutely transferable into sort of any arena we want to go into. But certainly there have to be some things that there's been a learning curve, I would guess, at some point in time. And so, Bree, I'm curious to know what is that learning curve that you've had to deal with most?
Yeah, I would say, and maybe this is different between even media industry, if you break it up between working for a newspaper, radio, TV, magazine. But I would say in my experiences, and I've worked at newspapers and a public radio station, that I just had this feeling that we already got each other. And so that wall of professionalism, not that it wasn't there, but it was kind of already broken down. I didn't have to be this is me as an adult. I'm acting as a professional. And when I started my new job, I was terrified. I was like, they're all going to find out that I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm not going to be fancy enough. I don't know, or business professional enough. And that was maybe something that I could have relaxed on a little bit, but it is a different environment. And I think that, at least one professor at Ball State had warned us that newsrooms can be kind of crass. And I mean, there's, when moments get heated, there's cursing, and not that people are smoking cigarettes inside newsrooms anymore, but the walls are down. And when you're in an office setting, you kind of gotta check that at the door and be professional. I was more worried about it. And, I have great coworkers who are wonderful friends, and we're all around the same age. So it's not that intimidating, but it was something I was really worried about going in.
I've always likened it to like working on the playground and then going to work in a bank. It's like there's no merry-go-round in the bank, right? But there is in a newsroom, sort of. Katie, how about
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest difference for me is just that things are a little bit more thought out, more intentional. In the museum world, I come from just got to get it done, got to get it on the air, got to, you got to make things happen, even if you don't have all the information. And so, just learning that like I can take a moment, I can think through something. If it's not ready, I can kind of, put it on the shelf for a minute and then come back to it. So I would say that's been the biggest change. And then too, just working in the development space in the fundraising world, I kind of compare them to the sales team, even though I think that development does a lot better work. I think a little less self-serving than sales. But so just understanding fundraising and knowing that that is a completely different animal than what, I'm used to. So, I think Bree said we all have that kind of imposter syndrome no matter what. And I think it's most evident when you start a new position in a new field that you haven't been in before. And so you just have to be accountable and transparent and let people know, like, I don't know, everything that I'm doing. And so you lean into the people around you and look for support, and hopefully you're at a place where you can get that. And we're all just figuring it out.
I'm so glad you mentioned that change in deadline, because that was one of when I made the transition from working in a newsroom and then coming into the world of academia. That was the biggest thing for me. People would ask me about it. I'd say there are still deadlines, but it's a different kind of deadline. My deadline in the newsroom was 2 hours from now, 8 hours from now, right? As opposed to now it's like, oh, I have to have that done next week, or I have to have that done tomorrow. And so the great thing about the newsroom, is once you were done, you're done. You move on to the next thing. When I'm here, it's always I always like, it's like sitting here on my shoulder going, don't forget to work on me. Don't forget to work on me. So I found that very challenging. And so I'm curious to know if that deadline thing has been a challenge for you, or has it been a welcome change, a welcome challenge?
I would say it's definitely been both. And I think of it in terms of social media because that's what I've really been focusing on for really maybe the last 5 years. And so, my new job, and everything is very organized. And, I get assignments through Microsoft Planner, and we use Teams, and everything is really written out on how they want this. So, they'll say, we want you to write a social post about this event 1 week from today. When before I was writing and scheduling 12 tweets a day. So it's just a completely different animal. But of course, the social post that you have a week to spend writing, it's going to be more thought out. The stakes are higher because you're representing a brand. You're not just telling the news, which in a lot of ways is just telling on what someone else is doing. So you're not really as worried about, of course, you wanting to make sure that everything is correct and then you're telling the truth. But that sense of like brand protection isn't as there as it is now. So it's totally a double-edged sword, right? Because the work that I'm doing now is more thought out and more careful, and something that I'm spending more time on. But again, I'm spending more time on it. I'm thinking about it more, just like you said. And it's not as much in terms of quantity. So it's not to say it's like quality over quantity, but it does feel like that a lot of the time.
Katie, is it similar for you?
Yeah, I remember my first week at the museum. We got together to plan out a festival that wasn't happening for 9 months. And I thought, like, this is crazy to me. I've never had kind of this much time to think through things. But, I think you really kind of get adjusted to the pacing. But I do think I need to be reminded more than most that I can slow down and that I don't need to do everything, immediately. And, as Bree said, you have more time to think through it and be more intentional about what you're doing and saying. And so I really, really enjoy this pace now.
Bree mentioned earlier the whole idea of making the change because work-life balance. And Katie, I'm wondering, has that been a positive change for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have the flexibility to work from home a few days a week, so I do that one day a week. I really appreciate that. Again, the first weekend I remember at Prairie, checking my email multiple times, Saturday and Sunday, and not getting anything, and thinking my email wasn't set up correctly, and then just realizing like, no, people just take the weekend off, and that's just not something that I was used to being around. So yeah, the fact that like after 5 and on the weekends you really don't get bothered, and two, forcing myself to not answer emails immediately when I get them. Like it's okay if they sit in my inbox, for a day, even, like the world's not going to end. So I think that's something that you kind of have to get used to once you get out of the news world.
Right, right. Bree, you brought it up, but I'm curious to know what has the work-life balance allowed you to do more of that you weren't able to do before?
Oh, wow. I'm so glad you've asked because I've actually picked up so many activities. I almost feel like I'm in high school again when you're like doing a million different things because you think it's going to help like your college acceptance, but now I'm doing them because I actually like them. So I've started swimming laps, which is the thing I've never done before. I was like never on the swim team or anything. So I go to the natatorium and I swim laps. I started playing tennis again, which I did do in high school. I have more consistent workouts, but I'm like mixing in these sports in between, which is just so much fun. I actually just started volunteering at the Children's Hospital, which is right across the street from my apartment downtown. It's not affiliated with UT Health My Work. It's a separate hospital system, but it's right here, and it's something I've always thought about, and I just always think about the kids who were there. So it was actually a very long interview process and background check and making sure I have all of my vaccines that I'm supposed to have since I was born. And so I do my first like full shift tomorrow. And it's just been a lot of fun. I'm in some dog walking groups with my little dog, and I just have all of this time, and it feels so good. But it's because I'm making the time and I'm doing something with it.
How do you think that helps then in your work life? Is it just make you more present, or?
It definitely makes me more creative, and it helps me meet more people, which I think in any job, the bigger your own community and the more people that you're meeting from different parts of your town, first of all, it makes you a better person, but it will probably make you better at your job, especially if you have a community-based job. And something that I do really like about my new team, and it almost makes me want to recommend it to my newsroom, but we have a Slack group that I think is probably a lot of newsrooms or other teams have, but the channels are so specific. So one is just like food and drink, one is called playlist, one is called 0 Dog 30, where you just post pictures of your dog. So they're all fun and like just a couple of them are work related, and people will post and talk in there when they want to, and it's not work related, and you don't have to feel a need to respond or to react to anything. But something about that has just made me feel really good about the people that I work with, and knowing that they also have other lives, and if they have like a recommendation on, oh, here's a new restaurant that I just tried, I think everyone would like it. It is good for everyone on our team to see that people have lives outside of work, because then that encourages themselves to want to do that.
Katie, you're nodding. Does that sound familiar to you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I, just really enjoy the work-life balance that I've had, with this change. I've been learning chess actually. Blame it on the Queen's Gambit, I guess, from a year or so ago. But you know, I'm able to make sure that I can leave in time to see my children's sporting events that are happening all the time. So you know, yeah, it's definitely fulfilling. And you know, I'm getting to the point now where I'm being asked to join you know, a couple of boards in the community, and that's something that I would not have been able to do prior to this change, for sure.
Right. That's very good. That's good. And as you've both mentioned, that's the great thing about it is you need to be involved in the community. And because of the positions you're in, you have more time to do that kind of work, which turns around and influences the position you're in. So that's good. So I'm curious to know, what piece of advice might you give an alum who might be watching this, who's thinking about making this transition or this change? Is there a sort of a good practices of how to go about making the decision, or one thing that you think would help benefit them in terms of trying to make the decision? And Katie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I would just definitely say, you know, get connected. Make sure that you are up to speed on LinkedIn, that you're staying active there, that you're seeking professional development opportunities, that you're enjoying a side hustle, because that can, you know, develop connections that you maybe normally wouldn't have through your job. But yeah, for me, it's about, you know, at this point, who you know will help you make that change. And so, you know, just ask too. It doesn't hurt to just see what's out there, send an email to someone. You know, we're at a point now where we are so connected with everyone that, like, chances are, if you want to go to a certain company, you probably went to college with someone who works there. So again, LinkedIn can be your best friend.
Bree, how about you? Any advice that you might be able to give?
Well, I'd say in terms of trying to determine if it's the right choice for you, I think when you know, you know. And there's really nothing else I could say besides that. Like, it's just a feeling. And if you're even
Is that what it
questioning
was for you? Is that what it was for you? Was it just a feeling? There was no like pros and cons list or anything like that?
No, it was like, I don't know if I can do this for one more day. And then I think the next day I woke up at 5 a.m. and applied for like 10 jobs. And the same thing with Katie is, like, I had already made sure that my resume was up to date and my LinkedIn was up to date and had been putting feelers out there. But when it got to that moment, I was like, oh no, if I was offered a job today that met this checklist requirement, I would take it. So yeah, if you've got that feeling in the pit of your stomach, then you'll know for sure. And once you get to the interview process, I would say definitely don't downplay your journalism experience or think that it doesn't apply to the job that you're applying for. I really think that employers right now, especially, are wanting to hire journalists in their industries. That was the impression I was getting. I am not the only person on my team who comes from a journalism background. I think that we have a very unique skill set. Specifically, I would say we're pegged as being very hardworking and wanting to serve our communities, right? Because why else would we be in this field that historically pays not always the best, especially in certain communities? So I think people want to hire us. So don't count yourself out. And another thing I would say is I was I think past the second round of interviews for my current job, and they had sent me another email specifically asking for video experience. And I had some from Ball State, but hadn't really been doing it in my work in working for the newspapers and working in radio. But I had a friend say, well, you've been in a lot of videos, like you've been in a lot of marketing videos that your marketing team at Texas Public Radio has kind of, they usually make journalists or people in the newsroom the poster children or the star of the show for their campaigns. And I was thinking like, oh, that doesn't really apply. They're asking because they want to know if I can edit video or, if I have production experience. And they said, well, we'll just send it anyway. And it was totally the right call. And it was not something I ever would have done because I thought it wasn't what they were looking for. So I would recommend to get that idea of, I don't think this is what they're looking for, so I'm not going to bring it up, out of your head, because you really don't know. And sometimes they don't even know what they're looking for until you tell them.
It's interesting. I think that's a challenge at any point in your career, right? Is what are they looking for and trying to read them, and it's kind of impossible. But if I've got a freshly minted alumni, somebody who maybe has just graduated and looking for a job that's watching this, what kinds of opportunities are you seeing that might not have been there, say, 5 or 10 years ago, but would definitely apply to a media graduate, somebody in journalism or in media production, as Katie was?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely more digital journalism jobs available than there was 5 to 10 years ago, outlets and outfits that are only digital even. I do think that, you see instances happening across the industry, but if I were to, plug, I think that public media is really doing it right. Every place is different, but if I were to go back, that would be a qualification. I would only want to work for public media. And it doesn't have to be public radio, right? There are different outlets out there that focus in different mediums. So those opportunities, I see a future. I see a future there for them.
Katie, how about you? Any things that you are seeing out there that you might steer a recent alum to, who maybe is just trying to decide what they want to do?
It's such a good question. I think that it's just important to, before you graduate, do as many internships as possible. That was what ultimately, I credit for getting my first job. And that was what helped me continue to get jobs, because again, it goes back to networking, getting to know people, finding out what you like and what you don't like doing before you get into that role, full time. I also think it's really important, and I don't think people, you would think people would know at this point, but just make sure your social media accounts reflect who you would be professionally. I interview people all the time, and I will go onto their social media accounts and quickly am able to make a determination of whether or not I want that person to work for my team and represent my organization. So I think that's really important. And then lastly, just continue to grow your skills. I still do production work on the side. I love shooting and editing. And so, I have my own YouTube channel. So I think it's important at any stage just to continue to develop those skills, make sure that you can do kind of as much as possible because it only helps your resume, and it really helps you determine what you love doing. I'm passionate about writing. So, I definitely try to make sure I'm still always doing that as much as possible.
Great words of advice from both of you. Bree Kirkman, Katie Warthan, thank you so much for joining us. I think that anybody who is thinking about making that transition, these are some wonderful thoughts and ideas. And I appreciate you spending time with us. Thanks.
Thank you.